It was strange because it was almost like there was this call to not use force. Had it been the same amount of people, but had they been Black, we wouldn't have made it up those steps. We wouldn't have made it to be able to get into the door and bust windows and go put our feet up on desks of Congress members. We wouldn't have made it that far.
Unless it's the actual confirmation hearings of Justice Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, which interrupted those proceedings and had a sit-in the middle of those proceedings, or going ahead and pulling a fire alarm during legislation being passed by one lone congressman, or the other times where they've done sit-ins during processes of legislation, whether it's to be pro-Hamas or anti-Roe v. Wade or burning down other cities or the Summer of Love, or the riots that took place in 2020 inside Washington, D.C., where federal buildings were lit on fire, rioted, and looted. And there were no rubber bullets or tear gas or anything else. In fact, we're going to cover all of it in just a minute, 15 seconds. I'll see you in a sec.
Do you want the truth? Are you tired of being so confused? You feel like you're more f***ed up than the lies on the evening news? Well, just step right in. We can talk about it all as friends. And if you want, we can hug and kiss and make up for the party ends.
Still Point is the name of the band, Stiilpoint. My name is Matthew Spear. Welcome to the Donut Friendly Show. We're going to talk about January 6th, and I have spoken about this ad nauseum on my live evening show. I've lost viewers over it. A lot of people aren't happy with my opinion about J6 because I don't get into the speculative crap. I just try to stick to the facts. But what I also have not done is draw the lines of delineation between J6 and BLM nearly enough. And I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of hearing about J6. I mean, this thing is going to be like the pork chop that never would quit when the neighbor's dog comes over and takes a bite. The left have been using it now for quite a while to dismiss all of the burning and rioting and looting over the last 75 years that have been done in protest. And although I don't appreciate either situation, whether it be J6 or the BLM riots or any riot that causes destruction in order to move legislation forward or to move the country forward to a viewpoint that they don't necessarily want to go to, the events of January 6, 2021 have been seared into our national consciousness. They're everywhere. It's a grim reminder of how easily a moment of anger can escalate into chaos. I get it. I understand it. I was pissed too. And let me be clear. I'm adamantly against the events of January 6th. No matter the reason, be it the FBI or riots or Antifa, the actions that took place that day were indefensible. It's akin to being in a car with buddies who suddenly put on masks and declare they're going to rob a store. My reaction, no effing way. I'm jumping out of the car. There's no excuse, no justification for such behavior, and I stand firmly against it. Now, you might be like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I wouldn't. I would listen, because that is about the end of J6, because we've talked enough about J6. One stitch in time does not necessarily make a pattern. However, we must address the broader context. The riots over Trump's presidency and the Black Lives Matter protests were equally, if not more, abhorrent. I would say more. During these protests, we witnessed scenes that should have never occurred in a civilized society. Police officers were maimed and targeted, subjected to assaults with fireworks and bags of feces, water bottles full of ice. Federal buildings and police stations were set ablaze. Businesses, the lifeblood of local economies, were reduced to ash. Lives were lost in the chaos. Actual lives were lost during the BLM riots, unlike J6. The lone person who was obviously taken out was Ashley Babbitt. A lot of people say it's all the police, and the police were killed. No, there were no police killed that day. That is a complete fallacy. The damage from these riots wasn't just physical, it was economic, social, and psychological. The riots caused billions of dollars in damages, according to insurance information and the institutes that have done studies. The protests from May 26 to June 8, 2020 alone resulted in insured losses of over $2 billion, making it the costliest civil disorder in U.S. history. And that's just the insured dollar amounts. The numbers are staggering, but they only tell a part of the story. The human toll, the injuries, the deaths, the shattered communities paints a more harrowing picture. Let's talk specifics, shall we? Minneapolis, George Floyd's death sparked protests that quickly turned violent. On May 28th, the 3rd Precinct police station was overrun and set on fire. In the ensuing days, the Twin Cities experienced widespread looting, arson, and destruction. Over 1,500 businesses were damaged or destroyed, with estimates of the total damages exceeding $500 million. In Portland, nightly clashes between protesters and law enforcement became the norm. The Marco Hatfield Federal Courthouse was a focal point of violence. On July 4th, 2020, protesters launched fireworks in the courthouse, leading to a standoff with federal officers. This wasn't an isolated incident. For over 100 consecutive nights, the city was a battleground with repeated assaults on federal property and local businesses. No cries of insurrection from the media and the local officials. How about Seattle? It saw its own shares of chaos with the establishment of the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, CHAZ, later known as CHOP. People can never make up their minds. This area was declared police-free by protesters. The result, lawlessness, shootings, assaults, and other violent crimes surged. It took weeks before the zone was dismantled, but the damage was already done. In Chicago, protests devolved into riots on multiple occasions. On August 10, 2020, a police-involved shooting triggered widespread looting in the city's downtown area. High-end stores along the Magnificent Mile were ransacked, causing millions in damages. The violence was so severe that the city had to raise drawbridges to restrict access to the downtown area. Los Angeles, New York City, Atlanta, the list goes on. Each city experienced its own version of turmoil, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. These weren't peaceful protests seeking justice. They were riots, plain and simple, characterized by violence, looting, and anarchy, almost like an insurrection. Well, it depends. I guess we can go back to the beginning of the video, and if you're white, it's an insurrection, and if not, it's just a somewhat peaceful protest. It's high time we address this properly. One riot from what people consider the right does not compensate for 75 years of burning down neighborhoods and lawlessness. If January 6th was a violent attempt to overthrow our democracy, then so too is attacking a city in an effort to impact legislation and enforce change through violence. Both actions are against the law, and both are atrocious. We can't afford to be selective in our outrage here, folks. The rule of law must apply to everyone, regardless of political affiliation. We must hold those accountable who incite and engage in violence, whether it's storming the Capitol or setting fire to a police station. The only difference is one seems to be being held accountable and the other. Justice cannot be one-sided if we hope to maintain any semblance of order and fairness in our society. The media and political leaders were quick to denounce the events of January 6th, as they should have been. They stood up there and cried, and even if they weren't there, went ahead and said they cowered and were scared for their lives. Yet many of those same voices were conspicuously silent, or worse, excused the violence that occurred during the summer of 2020. Some even went so far as to describe the riots as mostly peaceful protests, despite the overwhelmingly contrary evidence. This selective blindness does a disservice to our nation. It undermines the very principles of justice and equality that we claim to uphold. We must be consistent in our condemnation of violence, regardless of who perpetrates it or what cause they claim to support. As we move forward, let's remember the lessons from both January 6th and the summer of 2020. Violence is never the answer. Destroying property, attacking law enforcement, endangering lives, never justified, no matter how the grievance or what you believe is a grievance. We must find a way to address our differences through dialogue, debate, and democratic process, not through destruction and chaos. Why? Well, because that's what law and order is. That's what a republic truly means. It's not about the mob. It's about the individual rights and the liberties. That is what a republic truly is. The double standard in our society today is glaring and undeniable. Overthrowing local city and state government is somehow deemed acceptable as long as it aligns with certain ideological perspectives. The media perpetuates this by selectively portraying events to manipulate public perception. The fact is, no police officers died on January 6th. I've said it once, I'll say it twice, I'll say it 100 times. Yet the narrative pushed by the media seeks to paint a different picture, one designed to manipulate and control. How long will it take for people to see this so very clearly and still turn a blind eye to the truth? It's as if we're being asked to choose sides between two wrongs, when, in reality, we can and should despise both January 6th and the BLM riots simultaneously. It's okay to hold both events in contempt. It's not a matter of picking a lesser evil, but recognizing that violence and lawlessness, no matter in their source for true justification, they're just fundamentally wrong. We must stop excusing violence when it suits our narrative and condemning it when it doesn't. The principles of justice and equality demand consistency, right? I mean, that's what we're always told. It's all about equality. But you can't get equal outcome. We understand that. So at some point, the other side, which is being the side on the right, is going to say, well, violence is the only answer, and you're perpetuating this with your acceptance on the left. We must hold accountable those who incite and engage in violence, irrespective of their political affiliations. Justice should not be a tool of political convenience, but a steadfast principle applied equally to all. To move forward as a society, we need to reject this double standard unequivocally. We must demand truth from our media and accountability for those who break the law. Only then can we hope to heal the deep division in our nation and build a future grounded in true justice. Recognizing and condemning all forms of political violence is not just right, it is essential for the health and survival of our republic. Folks, thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me Show. My name is Matthew Spear. If you like what you heard, please stop by. Come again. You can find us at The DUM Show across all social media. You can also follow us by heading over to thedumshow.com. We would appreciate it. We'll be live 7 o'clock tonight. We're going to cover the Trump rally. We'd love to have you there. Please watch us on tv.spreely or head over to Wimkin for an alternative to other social medias that censor you. Wimkin does not. Thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me Show. God bless, and we will see you tonight.
This is the Don't Unfriend Me Show with your hosts, Matt, Leroy, Amy, Olivia, and Mike. Geopolitics, military analysis, and election coverage. Coming to you live on the Spreely.tv network and all major social media channels at The DUM Show. Honest, direct, unfiltered. We can agree, we can disagree. Just don't unfriend me.